Well, Mr. Chairman, this bill is a shell game. It's full of broken promises, property tax shifts, property tax increase, tax on our schools, attack on trees, attack on private land conservation. Let's start with the broken promise to defund schools, cities, and counties. This bill eliminates $152 million of so-called backfill funding for schools, cities, and counties that's been in place since 2013. This money is relied upon to provide essential services across the state in every county and every community. This bill will either result in a property tax increase or cuts in services like defunding the police, or both. This is not a time to be raising property taxes or cutting public safety. Senator Dawson yesterday said, the question has always been, when do we start the phase out of the backfill? That has always been the question of the Republicans, Mr. Chairman, but it has not been the question of schools, cities, or counties. I will say it has definitely been their fear. When the backfill was established in 2013, no one ever said it would be phased out. I was there and remember the conversation. If we're concerned about property taxes, and we are, we should be looking at tax increment financing, Mr. Chairman. Tax increment financing where nearly $400 million of property taxes are diverted for special purposes, where we have entire communities that are TIFed, where we have TIFs that go on forever, that never end. That money is diverted from the essential services that people think they're paying their taxes for. So, Mr. Chairman, there's tax reform to do on property taxes, and I would offer to you that that is the most fruitful area to look for reform. The proposal also calls for the state taking over mental health funding from regions and the county system we have today. And Chairman spoke at length about the benefits of this proposal. This proposal undermines, unfortunately, the reliable, predictable property tax funding that mental health regions have depended on for years and replaces it with unpredictable and unreliable state funding. We are on this particular part of the bill because this is a Farm Bureau priority, and it has been for a long time. Mr. Chairman, you showed some maps yesterday of the various districts of how government is organized. There's like 20 of them. I think you showed us 3 yesterday. It has regional planning entities, judicial districts, all sorts of different maps. The total state takeover of the regional mental health care system will result in total state control over how the money is spent and what it is spent on. And this is not a good change, Mr. Chairman. The state has been responsible for the children's mental health system over all these years, the children's mental health system. As a result, today we don't have a children's mental health system. It doesn't exist. I know we passed a bill saying we should establish one, but the difference between the state and the local systems are pretty dramatic. In contrast, stable, locally raised and controlled mental health funding has allowed for the creation of this regional adult mental health system. When you remove local financial support, this will also end local accountability for results. It will remove county supervisors. It'll remove their involvement and make it harder for mental health advocates to improve the system. The value of this local money brings with it significant local involvement and a commitment for actual results. This is an undervalued but key attribute of our existing adult mental health system. Another concern regarding the total state takeover of financing of the regional mental health system is that local advocates will have to spend every winter at the State House pleading for adequate funding, begging for adequate funding. This will be a huge burden on their time and energy of every mental health provider and advocate just to continue to do their jobs providing mental health services. The state has never kept its promises to adequately fund mental health services, and it will not with this proposal. I've been around here for a while. I've seen, kind of the ebbs and flows of the issues here, what gets money and what doesn't. But just look at the track record the last 3 years of the General Assembly. We passed bills to address complex mental health needs with no new money. We told the regions we want more crisis services, we want more crisis beds. We passed another bill to establish a children's mental health system and appropriated virtually no new money. Go create a system, no new money. We had grand bill signing ceremonies downstairs. We all patted each other on the back as we told the regions to pay for and implement these new programs. If anyone thinks that Republicans will adequately fund mental health, just look at their budget year after year for our local schools. Look at every other state department of state government, DNR, Iowa Department of Public Health, Department of Human Services, Department of Aging. For the last 12 years, not any of these agencies have gotten any increase in funding virtually. Their instructions from the governor, Republican governors the last 12 years is no increase, same as last year. We're not done. There's a few other things I'd comment on the bill. This bill creates an unnecessary burden for forest and woodland reserve managers, fruit tree growers, after the derecho decimated Iowa woodlands and farmland, or forests and woodland managers. They need financial help right now, not more government red tape and not more government regulation. And our successful charitable contribution tax incentive for the donation of property for conservation purposes, in this bill, it's abolished. It's been a tremendously successful program where landowners can conserve their property, allow for its use and its conservation. That program is abolished with this bill. Mr. Chairman, you talked about property values going up. I think most people like to see the value of their home increase, the value of their property increase. What you didn't get into details about is that when the assessments go up, local supervisors and city councils have the ability to adjust the levy. They can adjust the levy so that they can continue to collect the same amount of money they collected this year, less money than they collected this year, or a slight increase. And I trust our local elected officials to do that. So I think property values and assessments are going up are mostly good for people, and I think our local elected officials make adjustments around what budgets they do establish. Mr. Chairman, in summary, this bill breaks the promise to local governments and schools. It will result in a property tax increase, cuts to public safety, and cuts to essential local services. It will undermine the reliable, predictable funding that mental health regions have depended on for years and replaces it with unpredictable, unreliable state funding. More promises that will be broken in the future to support our mental health system. This bill is a major threat to our current mental health system. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I hope that this bill gets the attention of House Republicans, because that's what we're after here. They're not talking to you. You want them to talk to you. This bill, I assume, will lob it over to them next week. And I hope that it gets their attention so that we can actually begin the work that we came here for, and that's to set a budget and get to adjournment as soon as possible. I encourage a no vote on Senate Study Bill 1253.